joining all over the world. My name is Olasendi, and I have again here today our great mentor and a family as well, Roja. So Roja is going to be our mentor for today, and for you that you're already familiar with how it rolls, right? Roja is literally going to be mentoring and teaching and guiding everyone who have one or two things to like clarify, right? It could be around your day-to-day journey as a product manager. It could be something you've been wanting to ask. It could be anything at all. So Roja is going to be guiding and mentoring in that sense in real time, right? Everyone on the call as you deem fit. So you need to ask questions if you need answers, literally. So and at the same time, just before we really get started, for those who do not know, this is the group mentorship session. So this happens like every 2 weeks, right? Interchangeably with another schedule or another program we used to have in the community. But for today, this is actually the group mentorship session. All right. And that is why you can see Roger on the call. Just before I get started, I think I need to quickly say something. For everyone on the call today, I believe if you were on the call like I think 2 weeks back or so, Roger mentioned something that is going to be coming to Nigeria like very soon. I think pretty soon.
Next week,
Yeah,
Wednesday.
yeah,
8th
yeah.
to the 15th.
Yes. Okay. So if you want to be and if you remember right, he mentioned that he would like to like just have a quick catch up with some few people. So we decided to do a sort of random pick, right? Which we are going to be picking 20 people literally from the community who would be joining Roger, all right, to just have a short wine and dine sort of thing and conversation. You understand? So yeah, because of that, we're going to be picking on the community call today. All right. We hope to fill in the 20 slots, hopefully. So, but just be at alert. I'm going to be dropping some clue right later on the call. So if you're interested in having a one-on-one conversation with Roger, not just one-on-one, one-on-one with fun things to do, right? Please just pay attention on the call today and be more engaging, most importantly. All right. So I'm going to get started. Very quickly, just again, before I continue, I want to mention to us that for everyone on this call, you are free to check the right side of your laptop if you're using the laptop, and if you're using the phone, you should also find a way to navigate around it. So if you check, you will see an activity icon. And at the same time, so on the activity icon, literally, you can use the question and answer session or tool, right, to ask questions, either anonymously or you want to put your name, or you can use the chat box, right? You can ask questions via the chat box as well. And you can use the hand button to notify that you want to ask question as well. And your questions would be attended to. As you can see, Roger already dropped an example of what such questions or how you can ask questions, right? Using the Q&A session. All right. So I'm going to get started. I think before the questions start rolling in, I will just get started by, asking this question that I have before me for you, Roger. So there's a question from a community member here. The name is not there. So the question is, as a product manager, when you are not talking to your developers, no, as a product managers, when your developers are not doing anything, literally when design is about to start, what do your developers do? That's a question from the person. Should I
No,
read it again?
I've totally got the question. I'm trying to work out where the disconnect is. The thing that I'm struggling with is it sounds like what you're talking about is a waterfall scenario where the developers and the designers work on totally different things. But the highest probability that your developers are going to build something that really solves the problem and build that in a really effective way and deliver that in an unexpected way that can add the most value is when they understand the context the most. So if they have capacity and the more time they spend in the design process helping the design, the flows, the functionality, building prototypes. Like the more involved they are in talking to customers, in helping write the scope, in understanding the user stories, what matters, what doesn't, like analyzing competitors, seeing what other competitors' features are doing while you guys are looking at doing it, the more context they have on that, the better solution they're going to build, right? The better they're going to be able to co-create the solution with you. And developers understand how you might build a solution better than anybody. An example literally came up today. Or I've been working with one of my developers over the last week, and we're designing this new dashboard. We're trying to work out, like, in some graphs that to be able to drill down and feature and scope and like basically just zoom into a certain section of the graph easier. And we were kind of coming up with a couple of different ways. We could do it this way and we could do it that way. And we looked at some inspiration. What we ended up actually doing was just jumping on a call with the developer and having him pull up the graphs and play with it. And while we were like giving him some feedback and he was making some changes, and we found some functionality that came default in his graphing library that actually solved it in a slightly different way, but a much better way than what the route we were thinking on. So he was like, oh, but yeah, this graphing library has this function, I can use this. And we kind of went off. I was like, oh, wow, that's actually even better than anything we could come up with. So involving those developers in that process helps you build a better product. Get the person who's solving the problem as close to the person with the problem as possible. Like, you shouldn't be writing the spec and then passing it over to design and then passing it over to developers. Because they're just going to end up building exactly what you tell them to build, not what actually solves the problem. And so you're getting lost in translation all the way through. So a far better way to do it is cross-functional teams. And what that means is that the whole team is part of the process and you work iteratively through the problem. So it's not the developers don't just sit there waiting to be given a spec to start shipping code. Like, there's plenty of things they can start getting done that aren't going to change. They can start spinning up, which pages are going to be there. They can start spinning up the framework. They can start doing logins. They can find, like, what is the one tricky piece of what we're trying to do with this integration to this third party or something we're going to need. Why don't they just spin up a prototype and see how easy it is to connect to that and learn, instead of waiting to like the end that the project's already running a bit late, then they try and do this third-party integration. They're like, oh, the documentation and the actual code doesn't line up, and then like your delays get pushed further. Identify what that biggest unknown is and have them get started on that early if you have capacity. Have them just wire it up and just check that everything's working and map the schemas together and build a quick prototype. Like, that sounds like a super effective thing for them to be doing. And I think that's maybe just the one other assumption that's baked into your question is, like, developers, the value of a developer isn't in how effective they are at writing code. It's how effective the code they write is at solving the problem. And when you reframe it like that, having developers work alongside the designers or chat to customers or do competitor analysis and go look through different services and try and things, or spin a throwaway prototype to solve this one little tricky thing that we're not quite sure how we're going to do, that's like amazing use of their time. It's really, really good. So instead of, if you find that your developers are sitting there idly waiting for something to get pushed down the production line, you should maybe try and be a little more agile, like be a little more flexible and include them a bit more cross-functional in your design thinking. And it strikes me as a cultural thing that you need to try and address. That's why I was struggling to answer your question. If it makes more sense.
Right. Yeah, thank you, Roger. Yeah, I got the answer. I hope the person that asked this question is on this call. Yeah, all right. There's also another question from Bolu. I don't know if Bolu is on the call. I would have preferred if you asked this question yourself, but I can't even see any Bolu on the call, so I'm not sure. I'll just go ahead with the question, right? So Bolu said that matrix governance, right, in the context of Scrum or Agile project management, is a bit confusing to me. I really don't know what this means. But yeah, matrix governance in the context of Scrum or Agile project management, what is it called? Agile project management is a bit confusing to me. Can you please clarify how I can deploy matrix governance in product management?
Okay. I'm literally just Googling this on the side to find out like what he means by matrix governance. It seems like it's a framework created in the early, sorry, that's 2000s. So this was created by Nokia. Born in the 1960s and popularized in the 1970s, Matrix organizes employees into grids, with each employee answering to at least two managers: a functional product, a functional product or project, a divisional or geographical. So basically, you've got, it's like you'd have a product manager, and then you'd have like the head of product would be one manager, and then you'd have another manager running horizontally in like the office that you're in. And so it sounds like would be matrix function. And like, how does that transform into agile? I don't know. Is the short answer. I think in general, when it comes to, well, it's not that I don't know. It's just that it's going to depend. In general, when it comes to applying agile or Scrum methodologies, the point is not to follow the instructions. The point is to follow the principles. So if you go back to like what the Agile Manifesto says, like the core Agile Manifesto of, let me actually split it up so I don't screw it up on the fly. Agile Manifesto. But it's like working software over documentation and Agile Manifesto. I'll drop it in the link here if anyone wants, in the thread, if anyone wants to read it. This was the original manifesto. But it's like individuals and interactions over processes and tools, working software over comprehensive documentation, customer collaboration over contract negotiation, and responding to change over following a plan. And that is, while there's value on the items on the right, we value the items on the left more. And that's kind of the core premise behind Agile, is it's not about following Scrum or trying to like follow the Agile playbook. Those are just interpretations of how you could apply the underlying principles. So most people who do Scrum do what we call like Scrum but. They do Scrum, but they change these things. And that's the right way to do it. That's the right thing to do. It's the right approach to take into it, because it's the principle around optimizing for human interaction and optimizing for feedback loops and optimizing for customer collaboration and optimize for shipping the right thing instead of shipping it right. Like like getting the right thing out is way more important than how you actually deliver it. And so when you start looking at those principles, then you can start reflecting on, well, for Scrum, it says I need this Scrum master and a product owner, and I need to have these rituals, we need to have these meetings. You can then say, well, do they help us do those principles in our context? Yes or no? And then you can tailor them or adjust them according to that. But it's not, generally when you have like a complete clash of two very different methodologies are like, oh, this is never going to work. It's because you're trying to follow the instructions instead of following the principles or following the rules. I always say like product management is more like trying to get out of an escape room than trying to follow a recipe. It's more like there's a set of rules or set of activities or approaches that you can do that'll help you get out of an escape room, like where you shout at the answer, you try to lift everything out, put all the numbers together, like write all the things on the same board, like communicate openly, all those sorts of things. It doesn't tell you, it's not a step-by-step guide on how to do it. So when you get to like Scrum, and there's like the Scrum process and everything, that's like a step-by-step guide. But that's not the point. The point is the principles and why they're suggesting this is how you build the cake. But the understanding those elements and the principles behind it is what's most important. So if you have a very rigid structure, Agile totally does work with that, but probably not the recipe version of Agile, which is Scrum or SAFe or whatever you want to call it. But it'll probably be a more fluid version that's an interpretation of the underlying principles that's applied properly to your context. That makes sense.
All right. Yeah. Thank you, Roger. Thank you. I got that. Hi, everyone. Once again, welcome to the call. And this is a group mentorship session from people in product. And if you are interested in asking any question, you can just go ahead and use the hand button by raising your hand to indicate that you want to ask question, so I can call you. Or you can use the chat box to drop your question. And again, if you don't want to, you can use the activity tool and just navigate the question and answer session there, and you'll be able to ask your question. So I'll just move on. I'll move on with the next question, I think. So the next question here, someone asked, What do you think about technical product management? I have a challenge currently. Okay, what do you think about technical product management? I have a challenge currently. I have been doing a lot of technical related stuffs, and I discovered that the more I go, the deeper I have to dive in. I am confused because sometimes I get lost. Wow, this is long. I am confused because sometimes I get lost in the middle as I feel like I am no longer doing the core product management, but I'm just attending to the devs alone and not the customer. Wow. Okay. Roger, did you get that?
I did. So I'm just dropping in. Oh, wait, sorry. That's the wrong link. Let me just get the right link here. I've actually written an article on this. So I'm going to try and give you the summary of the article. But if you want the full reading, it's in the link in the chat. So there are, once again, there's no one way to do product management. I've got another article actually. There's no right way to do product management. There's no one way to do it. The point of a product manager and why the role became valuable is because they realized that there's everyone else is in a silo. So if you think of it like an organizational structure and typically how teams work, your developers are in the dev team, your designers are in a design team, your salespeople, your marketing people, like operations, like everyone's in these little silos. And so what they realized is that what they started creating in all of those roles is like you get a scrum master in a dev team, or you get like a product owner or technical product manager. In a marketing team, you get product-led growth, or a product marketer, or a growth lead, product hacker. In operations, you get product operations, and kind of like customer source, you get all of these like product roles in those spaces. And so what happens is we start like product actually becomes this horizontal a department that cuts across all the different silos. And so the core principles around it is around increasing communication, collaboration, and customer centricity. Now, when you apply that, and that's the same to like in any one of those departments, what a product operations person brings to the operations team is communication, collaboration, and customer centricity. How do we help the teams work more cleanly together? How do we help the customer's voice be the center of decision making? And how do we help a team? How do we communicate what's actually going on and improve the way the systems are integrating and working together? Like that's the product operations role. It's those principles applied into that silo. And so but in some organizations, especially in a particularly technical product, like if you're doing hardware or if you're needing to like integrate, like be an API, a bus that pulls in a whole bunch of different APIs and connects them all together, or if you're doing in like blockchain, or if you're working in like AI or machine learning, it's very difficult to play the coordination role if you don't actually understand the underlying technology, like the way in which you deliver value to customers and to the business requires a core understanding and for you to work around that, the core constraints of that technology, or the benefits of and understanding the nuances in that. And so in those cases, for you to be effective at communicating, collaborating, and creating customer centricity, you need to have a deep technical understanding, and you're going to bias towards that shape of product manager, like a technical product manager. And so there are different, like there's no one way to do product. There's no one single direction or path or description. It's the principles around creating different communication between different things. How do we build customer centricity into the dev team? How do we build business objectives or technical constraints into the sales team, or business objectives into the ops team? Like that's the role of the product managers, to bring the teams together, make sure that things are happening more effectively, that those feedback loops are happening, and the communication is happening. Because teams that can do that effectively build better software. And that's kind of like why product and product management, and the need for a product management role as a sort of coordination role, it's a little bit of a one size fits all. It looks slightly different in every scenario, but that's good. It's supposed to. It shouldn't look the same in everything. We're not another separate silo that's a standalone from everybody else. We kind of run across all these different teams, touching on many different parts. So if you find yourself getting more technical, there's totally a niche for that. Do it intentionally. I wouldn't get thrown into like some obscure niche that you're not actually interested in, you don't want to specialize in. But there are many instances when, for you to be able to understand, like to play that coordination role properly, and prioritization and those sort of things, you need to deeply understand technology. And sometimes the only way to do that is to actually get super technical down a particular vertical. So there's nothing wrong with being a technical product manager. You're still as much a product manager as a product manager. It's like there's no like fixed rule on that. It's more about, are you still playing the roles, and how do you make sure that you don't lose touch with the customer, with the business, with how you generate value for the customer, how you generate value for the business, and make sure that even if you're spending 80% of your time in technical specs, you're still spending 20% of the time focusing on those other things and prioritizing accordingly. And ultimately to make sure that you're shipping value. Because if you're just head down solving the technical problems, how do you know if it's useful? How do you know how people are using it? How do you know if it's actually adding value to your customers or to the business? And those filters, those lenses are what makes the product management role so valuable in a business. Hurrah.
Yeah, good, Darija, good. Thanks for that answer. Again, guys, you are free to ask your questions. Please let's make this begin. Actually, I mean, there are a lot of questions here, but at the same time, I would appreciate if anyone could just go ahead and ask questions right here on the call. All right, Roger, I'll just move to the next question. So there is a question from Justice here. It says, how do you undo competing stakeholder requests and balancing user needs with business objectives? I have found myself in these situations many times, and I tend to fail at it. Well,
yeah, so this is one of the hardest things, the biggest challenges that we have. The advice that I have is relatively generic, but normally what it means is if you've got two people butting heads, or you're trying to justify what you're doing the whole time, what it means is that you don't have a shared prioritization framework across the organization or with the person you're clashing heads with. Or if you have two executives and one marketing wants this feature or sales wants this feature, and your CPO or CTO wants this feature, and you're kind of trying to balance it, what you need to do is you need to be able to move the conversation to a shared framework and a shared understanding that it's not dependent on you. So where you can compare all of the ideas against, this is what we value as, this is what we identify as valuable. This is how we measure whether those things are valuable. Let's look at option one and how it impacts that goal, those metrics, those deliveries, OKRs, whatever that is. And let's look at option two and see how that does. And then we can have a discussion about the trade-offs and the pros and cons of each of those approaches, and ultimately let the people justify it against that framework instead of it being my idea versus your idea. Because if you can agree that achieving these goals is most valuable for the business, it's less about, oh, I want this and you want that, but it's like, oh, this is how I think we can help add value to the business. Someone else is like, well, by the same measures, mine adds this kind of value. Then it's like, okay, well, actually, this will add more value to the business. So it starts making the conversation about what's going to have the larger impact in moving the right metrics, not whose idea is it and what that impact is. So when you're stuck in the middle of that as a PM, and we get this a lot because it's not a perfect science, when you find yourself getting trained, like try and even internally put together, like just how would I evaluate whether these are effective? Like what do I think would be a useful framework to measure these two things, and then present it back to them and say, you've both suggested this. This is my interpretation of the effectiveness of each of these things. Like, am I wrong? What am I missing? How would I prioritize it? Do you agree with this prioritization? Give me some feedback. Like, what would you change differently about it? How could we make it have better business outcomes? But immediately there, you're helping facilitate a conversation with executives around how to deliver more business outcome. You're not having a conversation around my ego versus your ego. And so you need to try and create something to focus on that's outside of the personalities, that you can have an objective conversation about it without one person feeling hurt or feeling like getting the touchy. I don't know what the phrase is. South Africa, we had "Don't touch me on my studio," which was that's a very South Africanism. But yeah, that's kind of the thing. Like when you don't want to mess with egos, is find a framework that they can agree on, and it's normally like company values or KPIs or like company level OKRs or whatever that is. Or at worst, just what do you think the KPIs of these two objectives are, and how would you evaluate those two? That's kind of what I would lean in.
All right. Thank you, Rija. Thank you. I don't know why I feel like all the questions I'm seeing here, those who ask those questions, because I'm trying to cross-check the names and those of us on the call, and I can't really see any name that is on the call right now. So it feels like those people just ask the question and they're allowing you to dish it out to every other person except them.
So if
But it's
somebody
fine.
on the call has a question that you want to prioritize, raise your hand and chat. Also, I don't have all the answers. Maybe a quick disclaimer: like I'm happy to share my opinions. I share my thoughts. I've been around for a fair bit, but I don't always have all the right answers. If you can have something to build on, or if you think I'm missing something or another viewpoint, please raise your hand, share it. Like the point of this is that this is a group feedback and discussion. It's not just me lecturing because I don't know.
Yeah. All right. Okay, I can see some hands on, so I'll just call, I think, accordingly. So I'll start with Omar, then I'll go to Adra, Gbemi, and Favor. So let me start with Omar. Omar, please, you can ask a question.
Okay. Thank you, Lasangdi, and thank you, Mr. Roger. Okay, so my question is, I'm transitioning. Okay. So my question is, what are the potential challenges that I may face when I'm transitioning? Like, what do I need to brace myself for when I'm coming into product management, and how can I manage it? Is this something that I need to like work on it for like donkey years, or is this something, if I put my heart into it, I can be able to learn something, I can be able to develop myself in it? Like, what are the
Yes.
potential challenges that I would face as coming into product management? So that is my question.
Where are you coming from?
Okay, I'm coming from client relationship management, customer
Amazing.
service. So I don't know. Obviously, there are transferable skills, but
Yes.
what do I need to do to be better? Because you know how you go to school, you
Yes.
study 5 years in engineering, you study 7 years in med school. So
Yeah.
I was coming from a medical field actually. So, but I just wanted to just
Cool.
go into technology. So what should I do? Should
Great.
I want the midnight candle and all that? So just what can I
Yeah,
brace myself for?
absolutely.
Yeah.
So you're in for a world of fun. You can definitely learn and get good at this. And I think the two groundings you have are really solid. So medicine is going to give you a lot of detail orientated and you're not going to be scared of like lots of reading and lots of documentation, which is always good. Lots of writing. The customer side is going to give you the empathy aspect and the understanding customer needs, understanding how to have difficult conversations, understanding how to do stakeholder management, and like learning that softer side, like the empathy side of product management is one of the most difficult areas to learn if you're not that. Specifically, if you're coming from a more technical background, that's the place people struggle with the most. So the thing to note about product management in general is it's a really broad discipline. There's a bunch of different areas. As I said, like in every business, product management looks and feels slightly differently. It does slightly different things because the main role is a coordination and prioritization role. So I think that like the grounding that you come from in customer support, customer success, or customer support, and dealing with that is going to stead you really, really well into those other areas. But if you look at like what are you missing, there's definitely a fundamental layer that make sure I would recommend you do a course. There's a bunch out there, product school, like some of the communities have some in the learning channels. There's always lists for it, but do a baseline course. And the importance for that is just to learn a couple of the core principles, a couple of the language, the terminology. Some of that stuff can be very daunting when you first come in. Like what is agile? What is Kanban? What is a scrum? Like what is a scrum process? How to run a scrum process? What is a retro? Like all this jargon that you kind of just need to get your head around to get a base level understanding. I'd also recommend you research a little bit around like the software delivery process. Ultimately, the product manager is here to ensure that we're delivering valuable software. And so like doing as much reading as you can on, and this isn't going to be from either of the groundings where you've come from, but just how do you build software? What are the different steps that follow? Like what is QA? Like what does it stand for? How do you kind of do basic QA? What is a user story? How do you write a user story? Like what are the different steps or processes that you follow in a normal release cycle? How does that work? So getting an understanding of that basic flow. But then from your grounding, so there's a couple of different pillars of product management, if you will. You get a very early stage product development, a lot of customer research, interviewing, new product development, that sort of angle. Then you get a very like running and executing on the dev team, and that moves leans quite heavily on project management of just coordinating stakeholders, making sure we hit deadlines, making sure we ship software and we follow all the steps, and all stakeholders are managed and kept up to date. You get the analytics side of things, which is around reports and analytics and getting insights out of the data and user tracking and A/B testing and all that sort of stuff. And then you get a I think those are the main areas. There's a lot of like sub areas in that, but that's kind of the main areas. And so where you're coming from, it's going to lean well into stakeholder management. It's going to lean well into like new product development, like interviewing customers, understanding qualitative versus quantitative surveys, what that looks like, customer research, prioritization, stakeholder management, understanding a little bit around strategy and how do we know we're shipping the right thing, or how do we choose option A versus option B, kind of what I just said in the previous question, of thinking through, well, which one do we do and how do we get the information from the stakeholders we need to make the decision. So that's kind of where I would look at building on. Like, don't try and go too deep into analytics, because that's very foreign from where you're currently at. But start looking at the empathy side, the customer research side. You've already got a good grounding on that. So for you to become very competent in that and start being useful immediately, that's probably the shortest distance. And then you can look at expanding into more of, get the basic understanding and expand more into the project management, delivery side of things, and eventually moving into analytics and the coordination and strategy and the various different areas. But start with what you know and keep doubling down on what you know. When you're early in your product management career, it can feel very daunting because there's just so much and it's just so broad. And so typically try and find a grounding or an area to kind of specialize in, which coming from customer service is typically around feedback, customer insights, research, those sorts of things where you'll really excel, and then pick the other stuff up on the job as you go.
Okay, thank you.
Cool. I'm going to drop a article in the chat here around how to build your product management career. In short, the shape that I take is a Christmas tree. So in the beginning, like try and specialize in something like that. So go super deep on research or whatever you're going now. Then once you've got a solid grounding, just to get your first job and stand out, because it's very competitive for jobs. And if you're a generalist, it's hard to stand out. Rather stand out for the 10 jobs that need someone your shape, instead of don't stand out for the 100 jobs and you're just competing with everyone. And then once you're about 2 or 3 years in, then you start broadening out into the different areas of product management, start exploring more. And once you find an area that you're interested in and that you're strong in, or a sector or vertical, you then start focusing your career. And so you start becoming a specialist at the top of a particular fintech or of crypto, or in like, I'm more like the early stage product development, new product, like building new teams, like focusing on strategy, early product development, that sort of thing. So it's more about like finding that where you find your point, but don't try and do that too early. Just build a solid grounding in which you can stand on. But the link's in the chat.
Thank you so much. I'm grateful. Thank you.
Cool.
Yeah, thank you, Roger, for that clarification. I'll just move to Aduragbemi Gaga. Aduragbemi, please go ahead with your question.
Okay, hi everyone. Good day, Roger. So my question is like, let me say in 2 parts, right? The first one is, as a newbie, not really a newbie because I've been on the PM for like a year, that's learning and taking volunteer roles. Is it good to like be specific on a particular niche you really want to work in, like in terms of health tech, or fintech, or pro tech, like, so you are restricting yourself to just those opportunities related to that, and majority of your interest is just around that niche? Is it good for a newbie, someone that just coming in, being restricted to that? That's my number one question. And my number two question is, okay, I just got my first intern role, but that's not like the main role. I've been building products for other clients, more like a freelance related product. So, but first official role, and I was thinking it's gonna be in an organized setting. Like I'm gonna have a PM, because it's like an intern role. So I what I just wanted was at least another PM I could actually like that could hold me at the hand and like be like a mentor, and so that what I feel I've been doing, I can do them better and unlearn and relearn based on, because I've been doing things on my own and doing the products on my own. So I just tend to like, okay, ask questions and do it my own way. But I thought with that organization it would be much better. But sadly, I'm like the only PM of board. So what the company did was they collected an actual PM before I came in. So what the person did was just like do documentations down, prepare PLDs, help them with their Jira boards, just put down product discovery plan, competitive plan, like just like an aligned way at which he wants the person coming after her to follow suit. So coming to see the documentations, and I was like, wow. So you expect me to like go through all of this just like get this product discovery done and all of that. So it felt like something like being collected from ChatGPT and like just copy and paste, and you just kept it there. So it's like straining up on me because I had so much to really do and not even know if I'm doing it right or wrong. And the support person I should actually like relate to is more like the CEO. The person is CEO at the same time is an engineer, is also head of product. So carrying three different things on the head. So basically, it doesn't have the time. Aside from the time, it doesn't have like I'm not getting really what I actually hoped to actually get an entry into that role. And coming to the fact that it's like a fintech company, I'm not really like versatile
Yes.
with that particular sector. And right from time, I never really liked it. But seeing that was the first opportunity that came, and I was opportunity to like be the best candidate, and I was in. So now I'm finding my way to navigate around the documentations provided, one, and two, even to generally find my way around the whole company because the structure wasn't what I actually wanted. Even when I
Yeah.
highlight things that, okay, these are like issues on the present product, I don't even know what to tell because when I even tell the person, the head of product, he will tell me, okay, drop on the Slack and the developer will take it up. And I end up saying that, okay, the bugs are not being fixed. Or
Adora
like,
Bengi, I'm gonna pause. I'm gonna pause you there. Just
that's
you
the
can let
word.
me ask
I'm so sorry.
answer one of your 5 questions.
Yeah, you can just pick it up from there. Thank you.
Yeah. So let me answer the first question first because that's the easier one. Have a look at the article that I just dropped in. I do recommend specializing early on and trying to stand out. It doesn't sound like congratulations on the role. Like roles are hard to get. It's quite risky. So keep looking. Sorry, it's hard to get a job. Congratulations on getting the first one, specifically the first job. It's incredibly competitive. So keep looking for a better option, but at the same time, try and make the most and learn as much as you can in the role that you're in. To answer your second question, but yeah, have a look at that article around specialization. That would be my recommendation. To answer your second question is, yeah, welcome to the real world, hun. Like, it's a mess. Companies are never as pretty from the inside as they look on the outside. But what I'd recommend, it sounds like what you really need is you need a sounding board and a sort of a mentor. So there's two different ways of going about that. The one thing would be to find a group of peers, of other people who are about your experience or a little bit more experienced than you, and create a group to come together like once a week or once every 2 weeks or once a month, where you can just chat about like questions that you have, create a WhatsApp group or a little Slack group that you can just pose questions in, like a little council to like get feedback on and suggest like, hey, I'm so lost here. Has anyone done one of these before? Leaning into the people in the product group to be able to do that and ask questions for like nudging and guide. Obviously, a smaller group will help you get a lot more. You can be a lot more open and get a lot more feedback on. So try and build that, even if it's like 2 or 3 people that you can all help each other because everyone struggles with the same thing. Another option is to reach out into the group, throw it into the general channel or learning resources channel. Like ask for someone with like. Sounds like you're about 1 to 2 years experience, like somebody with 3 to 5 years experience who'd be willing to mentor you once a month, that you can just pose a bunch of questions and help you get unstuck and help guide you in the right direction. I'm sure there are people that would be willing to do that. If somebody's on the call and you're interested in doing that, I highly recommend mentoring junior people, you learn so much from it. Like I learned so much by just having to articulate myself and answer the questions and that sort of stuff, regardless of the level. So so reach out and try and find a mentor to give you that support. If you're not getting it in the organization, that's exactly what communities like this, the real value that they can deliver. So definitely try and do that. Looks like Samuel's putting his hand up. But yeah, so that would kind of be my answer. Yes, the role is a lot of reading. Yes, there's lots of documentation. I spend most of my life writing documentation and stuff. Hopefully, I try and write it more succinctly and more to the point than what it is. I often find if you're getting overwhelmed by like really long documents or like wafty language, is try to like read a paragraph and then try to write like one sentence, so like 5 or 6 words describing what that paragraph is trying to say. And then you kind of summarize each paragraph into just the core concept. And then you kind of read those together and you'll see, okay, actually these 3-4 paragraphs is just absolute nonsense, but this is a meaty one. There's something valuable there. So if you need to summarize documents, that's a little hack on just how to like try and find what's behind the actual content of the actual writing. But yeah, there are plenty of scenarios where there are shit product managers and they love writing lots of waffly things because producing documents is easy to look pretty, but it's not particularly useful and it doesn't necessarily deliver more value to customers, which is ultimately what we need to do.
Thank you, Roger. Thanks so much.
All right. Thank you, Adragbimi. I'm sure your question was perfectly answered. Yeah, you can check the comment section to just, have a good time. Yeah. All right. So let me go to the next person. We have Favor. Favor, please shoot. Over to you, Favor.
Before you go,
Hello, Favor. Are you there? Okay.
yeah, absolutely. Hi, can you hear me?
All right. Yeah. Go ahead.
Yes, thank you so much, Roger and Lasingdi, for all the amazing tips and everything you've said so far. Very impactful and full of insights. So for me, I wanted to ask, right? I'm currently working on a product that is for balancing finances generally for people in the gig economy, the gig workers, and then in the informal sector. And then I've just been, trying to get my head around some things, especially user adoption strategies, right? So I wanted to ask what you think would be the best way around going about user adoption. Are there particular frameworks for user adoption? Because like I've tried to do research and all of that, because this product is not something that, okay, there are other products like it, although there are products that look like it, but it's not just, it's something that it's quite different, right? So there aren't much examples that you can say, oh, I want to glean from these guys and try and see what I can replicate and what I can improve on, all those kind of things. So currently, I just wanted to know what you would suggest would be like user adoption framework and something like that. Yeah.
So let me ask you a quick question. Why do you use any software?
Sorry, say that again.
Why do you use software? Like, why would your customers use the software? Like,
okay, well, for starters, they would use the software or they would use the product because they would naturally would like something that would help them balance their finances generally and give them easy access to the product. Generally revolves around giving the users access to fast healthcare, helping them minimize their money around healthcare and all of that. So, and then a couple of other things. So mostly the users will be people who want to have access to healthcare with like very, very minimal amount. Yeah.
So the catch that you have, so ultimately the best user adoption strategy you could ever think of is to focus around value. So how do we deliver value how do we help people get that value faster? And how do we help them share that value? Or how do we help users receive that value faster? So when somebody signs up, how do I help them to get that value sooner? And if you can tweak any of those levers, you can speed up user adoption. Like think around like value, and it's a little tricky in your case, specifically in healthcare. I've played a fair bit in this space. The biggest problem you have with healthcare is you're kind of selling a benefit in case a disaster happens, but you can't really, when the disaster happens, your product is really useful, but you can't make the disaster happen. So there's like a little bit of a tension there. It's specifically in healthcare and healthcare type insurances. But what you need to play into then is around peace of mind, or play into like, what are you actually giving them? What is the benefits you're giving them? And then how do you communicate that benefits to them and make them see that and receive those benefits, or that reminder of that benefit often enough? So if you think about, there was a great, on one of Lenny's podcasts, there was an example, it was for Wise. They were interviewing the PM for Wise. And he said they were struggling to get, like, people were using them and seeing the value, but it was all kind of happening under the hood. They didn't really, like, they were using them because they did research once and then they would just kind of keep using them, but not really see why. And so what they ended up doing is every time somebody made a transaction through Wise, they would email them a graph of, this is what it cost you on Wise, this is what it would have cost you on one of, or compared to 2 or 3 alternatives, and this is how much money you've just saved in this transaction. So and then that started getting shared. Like, that was actually just making the value obvious and evident every time somebody used the product. That they started sharing it, and they got user adoption, and they got people signing up, and got much more people to engage around it through email marketing, just by making that value obvious. And so in your case, if it's looking at like, how do you articulate that value to what the gig workers are getting, and how do you deliver prompts in order to remind them of that value regularly, and how do you make it easy for them to share that value with their community or with other people to say, like, and how do you present that in a way that's digestible and easy to kind of deliver? And if you get those things right, and then look at, like, in the sign-up process, when somebody starts using your process, how do you get that to the moment of delight as quickly as possible? Like, how do you get them to see the value and then get hooked sooner? And so it's all around looking at value mapping and value delivery, and you can look at journey maps, like customer journey maps, where you overlay an emotion to all the different steps in the process, and then you brainstorm and come up with ideas of how could we shift the emotion at this particular step? What can we do differently that would make them elated or delighted, instead of frustrated or just feel good? And so you can start analyzing that. So customer journey maps, value stream mappings, but looking around value delivery, and loops that you can create, and how to make the value more prominent and more obvious, and more easily shareable, that sort of thing.
So fantastic, Roger. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Sure. I hope that was valuable.
Yeah.
I'm here all night.
Okay, we have just 8 minutes, so I'm going to, I saw a question, right, while I was kind of scrolling through the chat. So Ademola Ayodele, hello Roger, I'm unable to speak, but I do have a question that sort of builds on Omar's, right? I'm also pivoting to products, but from a public health / project management background. I have had some product training and also earned certifications, but the blocker I have now is the lack of software experience. What would you advise someone in my position to do to gain software experience, seeing as opportunities are hard to come by without some prior digital / software experience, basically? Yeah. Still kind of looking at the same question, but yeah.
Cool. So I've just dropped the link in the chat. Oh wait, no, that's not it. I'm not sure if that's the right one. Let me check quickly. Yeah, so software developers don't need to know how to code. Sorry, wait, it's not the right thing. Let me just get the right link for you. Oh, that's because it's the draft. Sorry, let me share. I'll share the draft link. This is an unpublished article for you that will answer your question. So there is a draft. But it's the same one. How do I get this one? Sorry. There we go. Cool. So yeah, that's an unpublished article around how how PMs can become technical without needing to learn how to code. And there's 3 high level. It is a draft token, so I haven't edited it. There might be spelling errors and stuff. Little quick disclaimer. But there's but the 3 key areas on how you can gain technical proficiency without needing to learn how to code. I often think learning how to code is one of the slowest ways of actually to learn these things. So the first way is around understanding SQL and JSON. So you can do courses on like just type in SQL or JSON, like what is it, how does it work, what are the formats, understanding how to make a SQL query, understanding how to receive a JSON payload and read a JSON payload, and understand the pros and cons of that makes like immediately gives you a much better technical understanding, and reading developer docs and a whole bunch of stuff and being able to make a query into a database that you're not learning how to code, but there's like a query language that helps to like be able to query on. There's a bunch of courses, examples, and tons of great YouTube videos and stuff on that. The second piece is around API and authentication. So learning how APIs work, learning what tokens are, learning like how does authentication work, how does like APIs actually make calls, try and set up there's a software called Postman, like the guy who delivers the mail, where you can go there and you can connect to almost any APIs. There's tons of open APIs that you can send requests to and see the response coming back, and just play with APIs and how APIs work. You don't need to learn how to code to do it, but it is technical, and it'll give you a much better understanding of how modern software architectures actually connect and how the systems talk to each other and the constraints around that. And then the third one is just around the modern web stack. So what is the database layer? What is a web application layer? What are your API layers? What are your front ends? How are they called? How does different platforms work? Where do things like Redis or Memcache or RabbitMQ, like how do those different types of databases plug in? What is a Lambda like, or serverless functions? Where does that fit into the stack? And that's just being able to read technical architecture diagrams, see what the services are, know more or less what they're going to do and how they plug together. And so like those are 3 areas that you can get a much deeper understanding of. That's going to significantly increase the quality of conversations you have with the developers. You don't need to learn how to like actually write code, but it means that you can actually understand what the developers are doing when they're running into issues, because most of the problems that developers run into is normally one of these 3 things. I can't say JSON is just like a base level understanding, but APIs and auth gets hard and complicated in very nuanced ways. And just understanding what the web stack is and why making the change here breaks something over here but doesn't break it over there really helps to just understand how services are cobbled together in a system. So if you're looking at getting more technical, I wouldn't recommend learning how to code. Go and research one of these 3 topics and see if you can go deep on them, and you'll probably be much better off.
Yeah, you really said a lot, Roger. I believe that was helpful for the person. Okay. I think another thing I would probably just add, I mean, from my own personal experience, is the fact that, again, you need to be ready to read a lot. I mean, being a technical product manager, especially the fact that you are not a software engineer, you're not coming from a software engineering background. The only trade-off you can just be ready to you can be ready to give in to get that experience is really to be ready to read. And when I say read, this is what I mean. I mean, when you see people write articles or something about this topic area, please grab and read. And again, I think another thing I think has helped me over the couple of years, I mean, in becoming a bit technical, that based on what I am now, is the fact that I don't joke with following people whose content revolves around some sort of technicality. It's not because of anything. If you go to my LinkedIn today, I mean, if I have the opportunity to share my LinkedIn feed regularly with you, what you would see is that you will see that on a regular basis, I get to see a lot of those contents. So, and when I see them, I don't just go past them. I mean, I read them. I mean, contents coming from analysts, from solutions architects, and all of those things. And at the end of the day, these kind of things will shape the little experience, or let me say knowledge, that you will also have, right, in how architecture work, how all of these things work, and you can now put it together, right, over time, and you become better. Just like Roger has said, getting your hands also into all of those tools, right, and getting to like use something like Postman, for software testing, something like Selenium. You don't even need to use it like heavily. Just see how it works, right? It gives you a better oversight on what is really happening in that space and all of that. So I think that's just the little addition I have, right?
Yeah.
Okay. I see that someone was trying
YouTube
to
is
raise-
really great for that sort of stuff as well.
Yeah. I could see that someone was trying to raise his hand, but I mean, we have literally a bit behind schedule, so you will not be able to ask questions in case you wanted to ask. And I could also see that there are some questions here from Elizabeth, from Ajayi Temitope. Please, can you direct these questions to the Slack channel? Tag Roger on the question and answer part of the channel, and trust me, he's going to answer your questions. Please don't do it in the DMs, so that the other community members will be able to gain from it. So just ask the questions, and I'm just going to do the last part of this call right now. So it's a simple one. I'm giving you a very brief expo. So I want to drop a message. What you're supposed to do, right? I'm not supposed to do this, but let me just do it. What you're supposed to do is to go to the link and fill a form. So the first 20 entries we get are those who will actually get the opportunity to like have that hangout with Roger. So I'm dropping that link right away, and I will just congratulate the first 20 that is getting in. As Roger will be, Roger will be hosting you powerfully.
So while you're doing that, I'm going to be in Nigeria next week, Wednesday to Wednesday. So sometime over the weekend, it's either going to be Saturday afternoon or Sunday afternoon. I'm not quite sure when Princess has decided, but I've said I'm happy. I'm there for the weekend, so happy to chat. So yeah, if you're not one of those 20, DM me. I'll tell you where it is. You can come join us anyway. Pretty easy. It'll be pretty laid back. But yeah, otherwise fill out the form.